Welcome back to the Racial Draft Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Ford, joined this week by Randy Smith. Randy, how's it going?
All is well. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, great to have you. We're a little shorthanded this week, but we are going to press ahead because it is a Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to try to memorialize some of our racial drafts goodness. If this is your first episode, I apologize, but what we are going to do is change the complexion of the comic book universe, one draft pick at a time, via the racial draft. But before we do, talk a little bit of nerd news. We are coming off, in addition to it being Memorial Day weekend, it was Star Wars Celebration weekend, and there was whole bunch of Star Wars shenanigans. We also saw the debut of the Obi-Wan Disney Plus series. Randy, did you happen to catch any of that?
I sadly, Star Wars has kind of flown over my head. So like I'm seeing all the kind of jubilation and I'm like, yeah, I'm the kid outside the window there.
Oh no, this is going to be an awkward show. So I will quickly run through the Star Wars for the benefit of the listeners, but Randy won't have too much to add. Um, like I said, we got our first two episodes of the Obi-Wan series, which kicked off on Friday. But before that, on Thursday, we got some news about the this late summer. We're going to get another Disney Plus show called Andor, which is going to center on the character of Andor. Sorry, I'm forgetting his name right now, which is Cassian Andor. My apologies. From the Rogue One. We're going to learn a little bit about it, the on the ground aspects of the Star Wars Rebellion. We'll also got a little bit of news about this show that John Watts is going to be involved in, called Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which probably can be well understood as Stranger Things in space. That's probably a good way to understand. It's a coming of age story set during the right after the fall of the Empire. We also got some information about the Jedi Survivor video game, which I don't know anything about, but I did hear that this is going to be set during the same time as the Obi-Wan series, so that there'll be some storytelling overlap there. We also got a big panel involving the Mandalorian, where people were obviously blessed by some Grogu goodness, some Baby Yoda goodness. They also got a teaser for the Ahsoka Tano show starring Rosario Dawson. There's also the unveiling of a animated show that's going to be a series of shorts called Tales of the Jedi. So that'll be an opportunity to explore the lore, as it were, with these short videos. In addition, they talked a little bit about the Marvel comics, the Star Wars comics, but not big news. What was also announced is that Star Wars: The Bad Batch is getting a second season, and that's going to drop in the fall as well. There was a trailer for that. Additionally, I'm looking at, there's one more thing that I think was missed. Let's see if I can find it. There's another show called Young Jedi Adventures. It's going to be based around young Jedi, and I believe it's going to be set during the High Republic era. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the rundown of Star Wars news. August, Andor will happen. February 2023, Mandalorian season 3. We got a little bit of Indiana Jones news, in that there's still more Indiana Jones news. July 2023 is when that movie is due to come out. So that was our Star Wars rundown. We have been joined by, or have we? Joined by Carlos. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, what's going on?
We just went through our Star Wars celebration rundown. Randy's not a big Star Wars head, but were there any stories from or news that came out of Star Wars celebration that you were particularly enthused by?
No, but not because I'm not enthused. I wasn't keeping really up with the stories necessarily. Giancarlo Esposito saying he wanted to physically harm Grogu made me laugh, but I haven't really seen any
Well,
other
I mean,
stories.
to be fair, I'm sure he means his character. Yeah,
I'm sure he means that as well.
just nobody, no real person. That's not a full out villain would want to harm baby Grogu.
Right.
But yeah, we got some trailers, which I'm sure we'll have more than enough time to watch in the lead up to these shows. We got two young people oriented series, one animated and one live action. You know, that Star Wars is very good at trying to rope them in when they're young. So
I mean, yeah, ultimately this should be for kids on some level, right?
I mean, it should be for kids on most levels.
I mean, the universe is wide enough that there could be stuff that isn't for kids. You know, there's no reason there couldn't be, but like for the most part, I've never seen anything that wasn't like kid friendly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just
Yeah.
I just think it's funny when people, you know, kind of get angry about the fact that Star Wars is kid friendly. Star Wars.
Yeah.
Ever since Disney bought Star Wars.
Same thing with like I get it, superheroes, I get it, but like you're really complaining that Spider-Man is in high school? Like you're really complaining that Spider-Man is not a 50-year-old man, like, the contemporary of Tony Stark? Like, what are we doing here?
It's like, I mean, I always think about it like this. Spider-Man's been around since the 60s. When I started reading Spider-Man, theoretically, he could have been a grown-ass man, with a family and responsibilities. And I probably wouldn't have cared as much to read about him when I started reading comics, because how can I relate to that guy? Now, as it was, he happened to be like kind of just getting out of college, and that was interesting.
Right.
Him like starting out his adulthood journey. But I definitely know that for like the kids a little bit younger than me, it was Ultimate Spider-Man when he was in high school, which managed to get to capture them. So
Right.
it's not surprising. It's not really a reboot per se, because we still have our Spider-Man, our main universe 616 Spidey that grows up, but like, I laugh about the fact that like I'm definitely older than in canon Spider-Man, despite the fact that when I started reading Spider-Man, he was like a decade, if no, he was like 15 years older than me.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's part of what ensures the longevity of these characters, is that multiple generations can experience these characters as they were. I mean, it gets a little tricky when movies, because we're seeing the limits of that now slightly with the original trilogy characters, and them actually aging out, and Disney / Lucasfilm trying to figure out like when it's proper to recast and when it's proper to like sort of encase them in amber with CGI and or animation.
Right.
And to limited results. But one thing that was successful for them was that, I mean, as much as I rag on the prequels, the fact that they were able to get 25-year-old Ewan McGregor to be young Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was like 70, in the original Star Wars movie, and have him to kick around for 25 years, to where now he's a 50-year-old man, playing a 60-year-old man.
Right.
Like that's when it works. That's when the recasting works, and the continuing the multi-generational story. So I don't know. I mean, Star Wars is always tricky because it feels like it can both bring a whole bunch of joy when it's done well, but like destroy your social life when people are arguing about it. Yeah.
It seems like a
sort
thing that we don't need to argue about. I don't know. It just
I
seems
mean,
like
it gives me a similar feeling to like just I guess Doctor Who or I guess any of those kind of like sci-fi nerdy franchises or whatever. Like people think that the story is just supposed to always continue from like the point that they knew about and continually like grow from that point.
Hmm.
I've, again, I'm a marginal like kind of person aware of Star Wars, but not really into Star Wars. And so I've heard a couple of people here and there kind of be like, well, what if we could kind of get some stories outside of the Skywalker, family? And
Hmm.
that's, I don't know if that's a majority opinion or not, but that sort of, the ability to sort of branch out and find new avenues previously unexplored is way underrated. We
Yeah.
need to have more of that just to sort of give people an end, whether it's the shows or whether it's the comics or what have you.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think that if one of the things I think we talked about it before in the show, one of the things that I've been extremely critical of is that they always knew that they wanted to make this into a connected unit, like a fully connected universe that would have a sprawling story that went on in perpetuity.
Mhm.
They didn't have to say we're going to return to um I mean obviously they could have said that we're going to return to the stories that the classic stories, but they didn't have to say that we're going to kind of conclude that story. They could have basically told as many stories as they wanted to, so that the people who were invested in that story could stay invested in that story, but then there'd be new stories being told for new people to get invested in. Part of the
Mhm.
fight, I think, was that they waited a little bit too long before they said, oh, we've got this other stuff that's doing these other things. And and people kind of got overly invested in the movies because they want Star Wars to mean something, and like a specific thing. And that's what makes Star Wars much different from, say, Marvel or DC, where it's a universe and it's got these characters in the universe, but it's really hard to argue that Marvel is about one thing or DC is about one thing.
Right.
you know and a lot of, I mean, obviously there's some political stuff, there's some identity stuff, just on some of the quirky, I call it quirky, but it's pernicious a little bit, in nerd spaces when it comes to inclusion. you know Star Wars has been a battlefield for that, because part of deciding what the story is about is also deciding who the story is about. And
Mhm.
the Skywalkers, for better or worse, it's white, blonde, um uh family, bloodstream, super powered, legacy story that, it's pretty revolutionary to try to break off from that as the center. It's basically, oh, I thought he was the chosen one. No, no, no. I thought he was the chosen one. His dad was the chosen one. Well, maybe his grandson is the chosen one. You know what I mean? It's a very like chosen one squared type story, and those things tend to uh, veer to the realm of white males generally, but white people, even more generally than that.
fully agree.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think that for the most part, oh, when there's one more thing that I feel like we should at least put on the record. It's not lost on me that you know George Lucas made a whole bunch of mistakes in terms of like the quality of the projects that came out when he was the figurehead. But the minute that the figurehead became a woman, people got real uh, vitriolic in their distaste for the franchise, despite the fact that the things that people still love about the franchise, she also made those decisions. So, again, not a perfect track record, for sure, but I still think it's more hits than misses in this new era. And you're getting a lot more of it. You're getting a lot more high quality stuff than we got over the last, 20 years or so. But
I
that
think we're getting into
concludes.
the era. Sorry,
No,
doesn't
no.
conclude quite yet. I think we're in the era right now where the Star Wars stuff is being made by people who grew up loving Star Wars,
Mhm.
and that can usually, that can cut both ways. But I think thus far it's been really productive for at least making the stories feel newer, even as they retread kind of, worn paths. At least they feel newer, and I do think that they are getting into newer stuff, even though there's always the struggle to make it familiar,
Mhm.
to keep pulling it back to what we, to the product, basically, to make sure it doesn't stray too far from the brand. But I do think that we're either in or about to enter kind of a golden age of Star Wars projects. And I think, like, I'm one of the ones who thinks Obi-Wan has been very good.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah.
I'm not one of the complainers.
The other thing that since we're not off of it yet, is that, like, to the extent that Star Wars, has wars in the title, and as Americans, we are intimately familiar with wars as our generations are defined by them. You can sort of track the extent to which our pop culture obsesses about the different wars that we obsess about in our pop culture. So World War II, we constantly go back to World War II and tell stories set in World War II. The Vietnam era, we constantly tell stories about that era. Lately, we've been returning to the Gulf War, or the War on Terror, that kind of samey regional war. I mean, it's not surprising that even in a universe that is supposed to be foreign to ours, there's wartime content that explores all the nuances of those wars, and of the stories that can be told, that are very nakedly parallels of the stories that we like to tell about the wars that we've
No, but see, they've only just now become political because people are just now becoming engaged in politics.
You mean the group that whose foot soldiers are literally named after the Nazis? You mean that's not political? Is that what you're telling me, Randy?
But before they were playing paintball, and then now all of a sudden, recently, for some reason, they've decided that these war things are going on in the franchise called Star Wars. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, very weird, very weird. Yeah, I mean, you're getting it though. Like, sometimes it's not political until it's not all white, like, it's
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as someone who is really enjoying all the different colors being represented now in these stories, I'm weird. It's like, we just said, I don't want to fight with people all day, but I also don't want to concede that Star Wars, as someone of my age, and as someone who Star Wars has defined my life, I don't want to concede that something was taken from these white fans. It's like, it was never just yours to begin with.
It always boils down to not necessarily not necessarily taking something away, but correcting something that the context was not as wasn't as well informed as it should have been. That's what it always feels like to me. And so whether it's Star Wars or Doctor Who or Marvel or DC or whatever, this sort of insidious, scary agenda that we keep hearing about is like, oh, they're trying to force critical race theory. I'm like, no, it's trying to force reality.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, as I continue to say, yeah, there's an agenda. It's called reflecting the world as it actually is. Yeah, it's the realism agenda. I'm sorry that you've been influenced by the not realist agenda.
That you now have to acknowledge that brown people exist.
Yeah, sorry. The world. It's the world in your fake world. But yeah, I think we will return to Star Wars, even though we haven't figured out how to racially draft Star Wars. But once we do, but off Star Wars, I guess we could talk about the news that wasn't the news. That's a new segment. It involves Blue Beetle. We almost had a story that would have been a pretty huge story, which would have involved, it would involve Jason Sudeikis. You might know him from a little show called, what is that show called? Ted Lasso. But yes, the Jason Sudeikis from Ted Lasso was rumored for about 24 hours to be playing Ted Cord in Blue Beetle. And I'm pretty sure that if that actually did happen, a lot of random people's interest in Blue Beetle would have shot way up. But no, sorry, it was just I don't even know where the rumor came from. But it was debunked.
Yeah.
So no Ted Lasso in their Blue Beetle. But we did get some leaks. We got a costume leak. And wouldn't you know it, normally the costume leaks are awful. This was actually a costume leak that was fairly legit. I thought the Blue Beetle costume looked pretty nice.
Sort of bouncing off that train of thought, I think that there's a particular sadness in the fact that Jason Sudeikis didn't actually turn out to be getting cast as Ted Cord, particularly because everybody seemed to be on board with it. Like it wasn't like one of those kind of controversial things that everybody kind of, hey, I could actually shoot. I didn't know to turn around and not actually be happening. It's like, oh.
Hey, Randy, do you mind just repeating that last sentence, because there were some technical difficulties on our end?
Well, I mean, it was a particular letdown just because everybody kind of was on board and was sort of feeling like Jason Sudeikis as Ted Cord was sort of the thing that they didn't know that they wanted. So.
Yeah, it's true. It was like the opposite of the Wonder Twins. It was where people were like, you know what, here for it.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's like, this is a situation where WB and DC might want to like get on the horn and record some kind of cameo, because the streets have spoken.
Yeah.
But I do not. What I do not want is for that to take attention away from the Blue Beetle project. I mean, Carlos, you had some thoughts about the Blue Beetle project. Now's a good time to sort of get into it.
I think that it's crazy that DC had such rocky waters for so long building their universe, but it appears that Marvel is going to get beat to a Latinx, production such as it is by DC, and looks like Blue Beetle's gonna looks legit. It doesn't look like they're skimping on the costume. It looks good. The cast is Latinx, the director's Latinx. Like it looks like,
yeah. So correct me again, like this is supposed to drop this year, right?
I don't trust any release dates. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if anything else is supposed to drop this year other than Super Pets.
Yeah. Isn't it Black Adam, or is that next year?
Black Adam and Shazam are supposed to drop this year.
Okay, all right. I know Batgirl got pushed back. Obviously, the Flash.
Suppose, quote unquote.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that is the tricky part of this, because there was a time where this was going to be just an HBO Max thing, right, and then they kind of reversed course and said it was going to be theatrical, but then all the theatrical movies got pushed. So, with an asterisk, it's been beat. Marvel's been beat to market. However, and this is where we have to sort of like really get into it. You and I are on the same page in terms of feeling like they didn't want 100% whiff with respect to America Chavez, but definitely wasn't wasn't a hit.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's closer to 100% than it is to 0%. So,
mm.
Hmm.
mm,
Hmm.
Like,
Okay.
I mean,
I mean, like we kind of got into all the details of that, but even I feel like Carlos and I have kind of been sort of rah-rahing in the background, like where the heck is White Tiger at? you know.
oh, listen. Let's get into it. I mean, we could probably wait until spoilers for later on the show.
Uh-huh.
But we can, let's play around with the idea of like Carlos as from the representing Latinx delegation,
Sure.
White Tiger, and also White Tiger is generally Puerto Rican, right?
Yeah. Yes. The
Okay.
created by George Perez, or at least co-created by George Perez, from San Juan. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna clear out ISO play. Like I know I'm putting you on the spot. Puerto
Okay.
Rican Black Panther. Um, give us a soft pitch. Give us a soft pitch for your best kind of like most marketable, most like promotable vision for like how you think this could be like the runaway hit.
I would do White Tiger. I would do it as a Disney Plus series,
Okay,
and
not a film.
I would not do it as a film initially. I would do it as a Disney Plus series, which I don't think is, at this point, that's not like a downgrade. Like
I
you
mean,
get a
it's
chance.
not, but I mean, sorry to cut you off,
Yeah,
but
no.
we saw how when WB announced um, Blue Beetle as a Disney, I mean, an HBO Max series, there are a lot of people saying,
Right.
you don't think that this can succeed as a movie, so you're sliding on HBO. You know what I mean? Like I
Yes.
do, and that's HBO Max, right? And that's DC. I do think that there are people who would look at it as them not having faith in the franchise.
Well, I kind of sort of want to pre-butt that just because of the fact that like White Tiger is one of those characters who the mantle of White Tiger is occupied, if don't necessarily consider Casper Cole, we have the
Hmm.
three family members. Like it's a family thing. It's so you have Hector Ayala, you have Angela Del Toro, who is his niece, and then
Ava.
Ava Ayala, who
Mhm.
she's the sister of Hector. And
Oh,
those
sister.
three,
I thought she was a like.
she Ava Ayala is the younger sister, and
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Angela is older than Ava, but she's her niece.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
what threw me off. Like I
yeah,
knew she was younger, so I assumed that she was a daughter.
right.
Um,
Yeah, but I mean, those three characters, like you can't really guarantee that there's going to be justice done for those characters in the course of a movie. Frankly, I feel
true.
like if you know you could kind of argue potentially for a solo America
Mm.
Chavez movie, but like,
But I think, I mean, sorry, and I feel
right.
like I failed on the clear out because because I think that what could happen is they could do a movie
Hmm.
and then have a series to flesh out the mythology, versus doing a series and then having the series lead into a movie.
I mean, look, we had Black Panther in a solo movie, and now we got Wakanda projects going,
Exactly.
in the
And
works. So obviously, I'm here for that. Yeah.
I
yeah,
guess
and
what I
that's
could see is White Tiger appearing in another project. I guess
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be a Disney Plus thing. It could be like, Black Panther wasn't introduced in Black Panther, it was Civil
yeah.
Right.
War. So, okay, there could be some event where White Tiger, um, Hector Ayala is
Mhm.
the introduced character, and then we get the White Tiger franchise from that. But I personally, what I would see doing is like already starting with Hector Ayala passing it off
Mhm.
to his sister. That's
To
what
A-
I personally would do.
to Ava.
Yes, to Ava.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
having
mean,
it set like in New York,
mhm.
having it be basically in the Heights without the music, but with
But
more
with
Afro
the
Latinos,
yeah.
more
I
Afro
mean,
Latinos.
so I would one thing that I would switch is I probably would make it an intergenerational. So I wouldn't make it a sister. I would do like niece, like a, like one generation niece, even younger niece, um, just to sort of reinforce that it's an intergenerational um title.
Mm,
But I would still basically, it would basically be like White Tiger's been doing his thing for however many years, decades,
yeah.
but its history goes all the way, like, since like its history in New York leads back to when Puerto Ricans first came to New York, but
Mhm.
the history of the White Tiger goes even further back, almost as far back as the Taino people,
Yeah.
as far back as the Taino people, right?
Who
You know,
imagined tigers, animal they've never seen.
no, I mean, or you know what? You take it all the way back to like Pangea, then, you know, Pangea, like when it was all one world.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, look,
Yeah.
my, my, I'm,
a
I'm,
a magical tiger showed
I'm,
up in Puerto Rico,
I, I,
and
I am just happy that none of us are discussing the fact that Angela Del Toro took up the mantle um, based on Hector dying. Like, let's not do that. I just,
but
Mhm.
you see, I kind of think that you have to, in a way. Um, so, but maybe what they could do is, instead of killing him, like taking him off the board,
yeah,
like
yeah.
shooting him, um, sending him to jail. I mean, wrongfully incarcerated, whatever.
And
And
I believe he was wrongfully incarcerated for like,
exactly.
yeah,
And then
for stealing
Angela,
TV, if I recall.
what'd you say?
I
For
think
stealing
like
TVs, yes.
I think it was something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and Daredevil represents him, right? So I think that what they could do is they could have basically like Hector's in jail, um, but Angela picks up the mantle, but not the powers,
Hmm.
you know, but and maybe that's how you get like White Tiger like the concept of White Tiger introduced.
Mhm.
But then, with the movie, it's like, oh no, it's White Tiger is not just someone in the costume. White Tiger is someone that has this amulet, and then that's when you tell the story of the lineage and the history and the ancestors, and it gets more power. You can even like throw in like, with every subsequent generation, the power gets even stronger, like, so you, Ava, are even more powerful than your Uncle Hector, and like, I don't know, I mean, I feel like there's a way that you could, it's not Wakanda, right? Of course not.
Right.
But you could kind of make a little mini Wakanda in Puerto Rico, like, if you wanted to.
I,
Yes.
I don't know all these prominent women characters. I don't know MCU can't help it.
See, the thing is, like, okay, Wakanda, such as it is, like a a paradise. Yes, Puerto Rico works as an island, obviously a tropical island, but also like the barrio in New York could also be structurally Wakanda, where it is like a neighborhood populated and run by Latinos. Like
Mhm.
there's just no reason it couldn't be, which is what disappointed me so much about America Chavez. Was
Oh
like,
yeah, for sure.
not only did you drop her into this story that she doesn't really fit in as a character, but like you also left her in Camertage. Like,
Yeah, in a place that has no cultural resonance,
Right.
right.
from from the culture that she purports to represent.
Right. So even if they did give America Chavez a solo project at this point, now that project has to do the work to get to the cultural resonance.
Right.
Where
Right.
at least the last movie, the least they could have done was dropped her off in it. and then
Yeah.
picked up from there.
Your boy El Magico could have made it.
Oh my God.
Your boy El Magico could have showed up and been like, "Nah, I got you. We could teach you."
There wasn't a way to get Luis Guzman in there for like one line in the first act and one line in the last act to just like bookend it and be like, oh, and this is where America, like, okay, I get it. This is how she's going to connect to.
He could have sold him a Pendeo and everything. That would have been so awesome.
Yeah, she would have been like, well, Doctor Strange says, and he says, Doctor Strange is a Pendeo.
It would have been so perfect. But no, but in all seriousness, I do think that with the right creative minds involved, I will push back a little bit, because the idea of Wakanda is so tied to the protection from colonialism.
Yeah.
That it's really hard to imagine El Barrio like being
of course.
I mean, it obviously it doesn't stand for the same thing, but you could at least, kind of say that that's sort of the fortress, or where, like, I mean, you don't really have Black Panther sort of stand for that same thing per se. It's sort of I don't know. It is more abased, so
Yeah.
it's more like the kind of street level vigilante. Like, maybe if I kind of need to branch out outside of that, I will. But this is like my home turf, as opposed to Black Panther being like, nope, we are. We had to kind of have a whole political upheaval to finally open ourselves up to the world.
Yeah, it's clearly not a perfect like one for one. Like Wakanda's unique, but I mean, obviously it does look
like I almost feel like, sorry to cut you off, but I almost feel like White Tiger, Hector Ayala, right, is to traditional White Tiger as Casper Cole is to T'Challa, for instance, or like traditional Black Panther. You see, like the idea that it's like Casper Cole's in like New York, or like he's like away from Wakanda, but he still has access to like some of the Wakandan tech and the, and the mantle or whatever. Like, so maybe that's how you do it, where it's like basically like he's separate, he's the franchised version of the White Tiger, like, but like when you return to the homeland, like that's where you level up.
I mean, it kind of looks like what the MCU is going to do is, if there is going to be a Wakanda for Latinx people, it's going to be Atlantis. I mean, that's just what the writing on the wall appears to be. However, that's gonna
have some pitfalls, though.
It also does appear that Namor and Atlantis are poised to be at least the antagonists of the next Black Panther movie. So like, that's great. We get bad guy Wakanda. But and I could definitely see a situation where the same way people try to do like, oh, Black character has Wakandan ties in the MCU, and that's how they're going to explain blah blah blah. I could definitely see that being where the amulet comes from that would power a White Tiger. Like, oh, it's an Atlantean artifact and la la la.
And you know what? I mean, they're both cats. Their power sets are very similar. One is black, one is white. I mean, I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't, but I'd hate it. I hate it as something tied to Atlantis. Like if it was sort of like the Atlanteans and the people who created the amulet, they themselves came from the same common root. That would be better for me, at least, than if they all came from Atlantis, because we are grafting that to Atlantis. It's right. There's nothing inherently Latina, Latinx about Atlantis.
Right.
Yeah.
What were you saying? What were you saying, Randy?
No, I was about to kind of joke, like maybe Atlantis was like, prior to sinking, maybe it was like just there as part of Pangea or something, and so they kind of had tigers as part of their thing.
Exactly.
I mean, there was like a leak of like the you know the cap and the windbreaker or some of the hoodie that like people who worked on Black Panther 2 got, and it does appear that there is some sort of like jaguar god
Right.
imagery. So it kind of does appear that Atlantis was this thing that wasn't always underwater, because jaguars don't live underwater.
Yeah.
But we are also appear to be in the era of Marvel gods. So
Mhm.
the same way that M'Baku doesn't worship the same,
Mhm.
doesn't worship Bast. Like there's no reason that if there is an Atlantis that is, the Latinx Wakanda, for lack of a better term, then it doesn't have to be that they're all Aztec. It could be there's Aztec,
Right.
Mayan, Olmec, Taino,
Mhm.
whatever, Inca, all kind of imagery, kind of an
Right.
amalgamation, in a way that's still respectful,
Mhm.
but yeah, the problem will be, and gets back to the kind of the original sin of the character. Tigers don't exist in Latin America. George Perez, what were you thinking? So
Well, I think he was thinking that was supposed to be a white guy, and he was like, "We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
This is going to be in Harlem,
Yeah,
Spanish Harlem."
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if we were assigning, where would a tiger god come from, then white tiger, guess what, becomes South Asian.
yes.
I mean,
So
it was like the thing that crosses my mind is that maybe he kind of thought that white jaguar didn't have the same ring to it or
Oh, it
something.
definitely doesn't. It
right,
definitely doesn't. But
right.
I mean, or he was just named by a white person, and they
Yeah.
didn't know any better. They didn't know their.
I mean, it was also the martial arts era of Marvel, where everything
Exactly.
were tigers and dragons and whatever.
Sure.
So,
and it was definitely meant to be like a martial arts character.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, what I think we're coming together on is the idea that maybe the power, the amulet, may originate from the same gods or power source that the Atlanteans got their power from, but
Right.
they're not. But the Taino people are distinct from the Atlanteans. And I think that there's a way that they could pull that off. But the downside of that is probably if you already have Namor as the, for lack of a better term, Latino Black Panther, then you don't have White Tiger as a Latino Black Panther.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't
he
think...
then becomes Latino Shang-Chi. Shang-Chino.
honestly, I don't really know that y'all want Namor as your like your role model. Like,
No.
I mean, yeah, no, he's Latino, yes, great representation, but to have him be like your flagship guy that you kind of hang your hat on, nah, I wouldn't go for that. That's
Well, no, I mean, but to see Namor's a weird cat though, right? Because he gets a lot of love. Like people really dig Namor.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, you kind of like they like him because he's sort of this kind of charismatic, arrogant jerk who kind of wants all the smoke with everybody all the time. Yeah. But there is like this constant nagging worry, especially given the fact that he's being introduced in the context of antagonism to Wakanda, that you are going to get this horrible scene that happened back in, I believe, 2005 or 2006, where he uses his trident and the mystical power of it to flood Wakanda and just indiscriminately just flood it, devastate Wakanda as an act of war. And like, you can't root for that guy. I really hope they don't go that route.
But here's why. I mean, I'm going to push back a little bit though. Push back a little bit, because what if we get a scene in Wakanda Forever where there's a war between Wakanda and the originators, the pre-Atlanteans, where Wakanda drowns that city and makes it Atlantis. At that point,
Well, I mean,
it just becomes like, revenge.
well, no, no,
You did it to my people, and now I will do it to your people. Like,
I,
it's not a great thing to do, but it's significantly less reprehensible.
yes, I understand that, but I say, like, I believe that if an act like that is done, um, I personally, I don't want it to happen, but it's entirely possible, and like I wouldn't, like, I would be a fool to try to like pretend as though it couldn't possibly happen. But if it were to happen, I would want to kind of have a scenario wherein um Namor may have been like one of those who got blipped, wasn't in the way, and in his absence, Atuma kind of steps into the role of like, I'm going to be the regent and I'm going to lead you into this glorious new era, and I'm going to do that by kind of retaliating against our longtime begrudged foes, rather than saying that Namor, this guy who we know teams up occasionally with heroes, is like, hey, actually, I'm gonna do a genocide. Enjoy. Like, that's probably
No,
not.
right. I mean, I get that part. Obviously, you want to frame it as something that he would feel bad about afterwards, right? But
This action, so you should leave it in the hand of a villain.
but while I don't disagree about it being villainous, sometimes you do something really like massive in order to show like how powerful a character is. So, I mean, that's the struggle. Obviously, we don't know, and we've talked about this before. Part of what when people thought that T'Challa was still going to be with us, when people wanted to see T'Challa and Namor face off, they would routinely mention that.
Yeah.
They would routinely mention, well, Namor is the one who flooded Wakanda. He's doing, like, I mean, I think that once you say Namor is going to be in the Wakanda sequel, it's almost like Chekhov's flood, right? I'm not saying he's gonna destroy Wakanda. I hope he doesn't destroy
No, no,
Wakanda.
that's what I'm saying. It feels like the possibility of that is very high. Even like whether it's a certain thing or not, it feels like the possibility is looming there.
But it's
Right,
okay,
but-
guys, because he was under the influence of the wet hold. It's just like a water-based book,
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Haven't we all been in the throes of the wet hold?
Who among us?
Yeah, like, or Doom is pulling the strings or whoever. But I mean, the more that I've heard about these rumors about where Atlantis is going to originate from, the more that I think that there will be a centuries old grudge of Wakanda somehow being responsible for that, for his homeland being flooded and his homeland ending up underwater. And while I don't think he will completely destroy Wakanda, I can imagine a scenario where he devastates part of Wakanda. A la spoilers for the Batman. Like where he doesn't like completely destroy the city, but he, creates a tidal wave or something awesome that can show up in a trailer.
You think he's gonna flood Wakanda Square Garden? I don't know. This is also where the Eternals play in, because we saw, man, I can't even remember which Mesoamerican civilization we did see, but they were there when the conquistadors were coming. So like if Atlantis is going to play into that history, like they have seeded that history exists in the MCU, that like
True.
There were Mesoamerican peoples there, hundreds of years ago. And maybe we were seeing the beginnings of Atlantis. We don't even know. But this all started when MCU or Marvel was throwing out casting calls for Mayans, specifically Mayans, which I thought was interesting. And then when the leak of the Black Panther stuff came out, people were saying it was an Aztec god, and we're like, well, I really hope they're not just gonna mumbo jumbo, like throw all this together. Aztec Mayans are the same, because they're not. But it does that led me to think like, Wakanda isn't based on one African country or one tribes. Sure. It's definitely an amalgamation of many sub-Saharan African tribes and whatnot. So I do think that there's a chance to make something really like beautiful there, but you got to get the right
creatives too, though.
Yes. And you are positioning it, and ultimately the first story that will involve Atlantis is not going to be told by a Latinx person. So, so like if you're positioning, it's one thing to have Black Panther in Civil War where he's like always morally right. He is kind of like he's wise,
but he's still the antagonist though.
But
it's an obstacle for sure. Yeah. But he does fight on one side of the two sides. Like he's an antagonist in the way that Tony Stark is an antagonist.
Yeah. But I'm saying Tony Stark is what I'm saying is that we spend the movie being like, no, T'Challa, you don't have to do that. But he is still like pursuing vengeance,
I mean, were we all doing that? Because I was here for Bucky getting beat up. But that was giving me life.
But actually, this is a great example, because what is he? He's the antagonist because he wants to kill Bucky, because he believes Bucky killed his father. So even in that way, you're like, but he's still a good guy. It's not like he just wants to, murder this guy. He thinks this guy killed his father. Yeah. That could totally be
right. So
when
maybe
they drop.
So maybe
Namor.
So maybe it could be the same kind of deal, right? Where we were told throughout the movie that it was Wakanda who flooded whatever place we would decide to call Atlantis, before it's Atlantis, and created Atlantis, and then and then we find out that it was all a lie. It was propaganda or something. And that's where you can have, what's the guy's name? Randy?
Atuma.
What's his name?
Atuma. Yeah.
Atuma. So you find out that Atuma's actually been perpetuating the propaganda, in order to create this war. And in fact, it's all a lie. It's just what the Atlanteans tell themselves in order to justify the war, against the Wakanda, or the hatred against Wakanda.
I would even see thematically kind of tying back to the first Black Panther movie, where Wakanda did do some dirty shit during a war, in ancient times, or they stole something from Atlantis that that maybe that their civilization is kind of based on.
Well, my idea was that the heart-shaped herb grows in both places.
There you go. Yeah.
That the heart-shaped herb is what saved Atlantis from being flooded.
Right.
That when all the other sort of underlying outside places were destroyed by whatever the Wakandans did, the people who were the closest to the reserve of the heart-shaped herb were able to survive, and that's how they developed the ability to breathe underwater. But they spent, each of them vowed, that they blood what's his name, vengeance on any Wakandans, that it's became part of Atlantean culture that all Wakandans must die or whatever, and then so you have Namor, who was raised into that. And you have Atuma, who was even a more radical. He's basically like the Atlantean Killmonger, right? But it's if he was raised in it, and that could be so. I think there's a way to sort of tell that story where Namor is still an asshole. He's still classic Namor, but by the end you realize that he's not irredeemable.
If Wakanda is created on an asteroid of vibranium, it's not crazy that there would be two asteroids that hit the Earth. And the Yucatan Peninsula was created by an asteroid. Cancun sits like on a crater essentially. There's really no reason like that couldn't just be, you know, part of the story. That yeah, the heart-shaped herb, all of that, you know, underwater vibranium
Mhm.
kingdom. I could totally see that.
Well, that's the thing. At that time, it wouldn't have been underwater even.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like so it's like I mean, this is again bringing back Pangea. This is a Pangea argument, right? So it's like the two great gods, the Panther and the Jaguar, you know, and the two tribes, one that represented the Panther and one that represented the Jaguar, you know, like, you know, fought the war over the war of the herb. And
Okay, see now I have to like go back and watch the like National Geographic things to try to like see how exactly Pangea broke up. Like
it wasn't actually a war.
In fact, the Pangea breaking up was caused by someone throwing a trident into the heart-shaped herb, the vibranium. No, sorry, not the heart-shaped herb, the vibranium deposit, and the ensuing vibration caused the Earth to crack apart, the continents to crack apart.
It was old as time.
It's a story as old as time. It's a tuning fork, is what it is. But yeah, so we've just fantasy booked a movie that's going to come out, and we've saved Latino representation is what I'm seeing.
Well, yeah, all of this to say that Marvel is getting beat to their Latinx, you know, to a Latinx story by DC, which is kind of nuts when you consider how rocky DC
Sony
was.
They're getting beat by not just DC but also by Sony.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. So and while that is true, and maybe this is just me being a kind of an asshole. Right now, there's like no Blue Beetle representation, no what's the name? No Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle representation happening, like on multimedia. You know, like not on the CW, not in the comics, barely even on Young Justice, where like he actually had an arc a few years ago.
They had the round robin. Whoever devised the round robin is forever my arch nemesis. But they had the round robin, and he was like one of like I want to say 8 or like 12 options or 16 options or whatever. And they are recently kind of realizing their mistake of making us beg and plead and choose for like all of these different representation, all these different diverse titles. And I think there was something that was fairly recent that Jaime Reyes comic is going to actually come out. Graduation Day, I believe it's called. And like they I guess somebody hit them over the head and was like, bruh, you got a whole movie about to come out about Jaime Reyes. You probably shouldn't have like cast his comic to the side. So yeah. And I think his last solo was in 2007?
Yeah, so it's kind of like trust, and maybe we shouldn't, that like, if Marvel does a thing for the purpose of presenting, be it their Latinx Black Panther, or their Latinx Spider-Man, or or their Latinx Captain America, like whatever analog character you want to say that is supposed to be Latinx representation, after the character makes the impact, notwithstanding America Chavez, purported impact, they will attempt to market that character in other media so that we don't forget about that character, and that's the secondary part of the movie. You have the movie in order to bring the character into the zeitgeist, and then you capitalize on the character being in the zeitgeist, and it still remains to be seen whether DC is going to do that part.
Yeah, I would fully expect like Black Panther's coming out this fall, correct?
Yeah.
I would fully expect, like, I'd almost be surprised if there wasn't some sort of like Namor mini event that comes out around that time.
I mean, it's Namor is a character that has so many different connections to just so many different like areas of Marvel. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten another ongoing, frankly. Like I
Yeah.
think he's a very deeply,
Well, the other tricky thing about Namor is that up until recently, up until the casting actually of what's the actor's name again? Help me out.
Tenoch
Tenoch Huerta.
Yeah.
Up until that casting, the old Asian American delegation was trying to, get Namor on their side. So I think that there was a little bit of a mixing in terms of like what they were trying to portray with regard to Namor, because remember he was tied in with Agents of Atlas. Greg Pak, I think, wrote a sort of like quasi Namor mini
Atlantis Attacks, I believe.
Yeah, Atlantis Attacks. So, I think that's part of the tricky aspect of what they're doing now, or what they will plan to do with respect to Namor and representation. And who knows, maybe this is right up in the wheelhouse of racial draft, right? I mean, if they successfully pull off the Namor racial draft, then we'll see that mythology kind of get slipped into the comics. That's how we'll know it was successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's been a surprising lack of synergy with some of the stuff going on in the comics and the shows. Like, I don't believe Mark Spector's Guatemalan in the comics. They stuck with America Chavez's original-ish origin in the movies, which, like, then what was the point of redoing the origin last year if you weren't like, I thought for sure that's what they were streamlining to get to for the movie.
I don't know either, especially because I'm not sure if the retcon was well received.
No, I don't think it was.
I think the retcon is a mixed bag.
From what I was hearing, the retcon was an overcorrection.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that.
We've talked about this. I agree with like our opinions on it on the record. Like I like the part which isn't a retcon. I like the part of adding that she was raised in Washington Heights. I like that part. I just didn't think that they needed to retcon her origin in the utopian parallel to do that.
Right.
Both of those things could have coexisted. And I know that certain people, say Task, believe that like she needed to have like human parents in order for her culture to be authentic, I guess. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that
I don't necessarily believe that, but I also don't necessarily think that retconning it, keeping the utopian parallel necessarily even meant that her parents couldn't have been human. Like that, there was still a way to circle all of those squares.
I stick with my original thought of that they should have been like El Dorado, some kind of something that was like tied to Earth, that was like delivered away from Earth to withstand or get away from potentially being colonized and whatever, like under the kind of ward of their deities and stuff like that, and so kind of like relocated to this new dimension. But
but I mean this is where like this is kind of like in the realm of like when we get into the racial draft, it's like if humanoid aliens can be understood to both be humanoid aliens but still white, or still Asian or still black or whatever, then there's no reason that there couldn't be humanoid aliens who speak Spanish, whose complexion is a little on the brown side, that we are like, oh yeah, I mean, they're not technically Latino in the sense of originating in these countries, but if they went to those countries, they would be received as the same.
I as somebody who currently is trying to do a project that is working on exactly that principle, yes, I absolutely can agree with that. Like, I mean, we get white characters in outer space speaking English, and we don't question it, like, or we kind of minimally question it. So yes, absolutely. If you want to say that, whatever Latinx or indigenous tribes out in wherever have kind of that analogy, then yes, I think people want to pick and choose where their credulity can be strained. But yeah,
Yeah. So to me, it's like if she's a little brown girl who comes from the utopian parallel and she gets adopted by, I forgot the name of the family. Do you remember the family?
Can't remember the name of the
Um,
family.
yeah, like, and she's brought up in Washington Heights and then goes on adventures and becomes a superhero, and everything that we know about America Chavez sort of flows from that. Like, obviously, I'm not Latino, you know, but I would not question whether her connection to that community and that culture was authentic.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, obviously there are always going to be some people that are, going to want more purity to that story, but like, I don't think that as long as she connects to a culture, then I think that that's great. But there's also like a way to do it where they could have done it where kind of Shang-Chi it, where one of her moms is from Earth and one of her moms is from the utopian parallel. Like there were so many permutations and they overcorrected. I absolutely agree that they overcorrected with that origin. But then Marvel just like booted all of it. They punted that whole origin and went back to what was wrong with the first origin, which is this kind of like pan Latin, characters. Like, but no.
Yeah,
Like,
and the thing, and now some Latinx creator is going to have to fix it, right?
right.
Like, if we
yeah,
want to make America Chavez work in the MCU, someone's going to have to be like, okay, so you did what? Okay, how do we make her authentic?
Right.
And that's a solve for a good writer. I trust that there are good writers who can do it, but you put them in that corner when you didn't have to.
Right.
That's almost as bad as the legendary, we almost had T'Challa speaking with a British accent, right? Like, if Ryan Coogler inherits the project where T'Challa is speaking with a British accent, now he has to be like, how do we fix this?
Mm-hmm. Right. And or you make it part of the character where like he's an outsider in Wakanda, which doesn't really speak to the character. Like, that's not, you're
right.
changing at that point, you're changing the character. It becomes almost character assassination. So yeah.
Again, we are rooting for the character, we're rooting for the actress.
Yes.
We are not here to be like, screw Choti Gomez, like, no.
No.
However, we have to call a spade when it comes to the not the representation, but the positioning of the character in terms of future storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's something that they're going to have to overcome. And it was their first big swing with regard to representation of a not Black Panther. Well, sorry, their second big swing of a not Black Panther variety, with
Shang-Chi
Shang-Chi
being the first.
yeah, with being the first. And more or less they got it right with Shang-Chi.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just a little disappointing that they didn't make it work with America Chavez.
Yeah. And I just, I hope that they haven't, first of all, I hope that they understand that they made mistakes. I really do. And that's why you'll see me on Twitter tweeting about America Chavez. And I mean, yes, it is kind of ridiculous for a 38-year-old man to be tweeting about America Chavez as often as I do, but I want Marvel to see that they made a mistake here so that when they go forward, they're like, we have to correct this.
Yeah. And again, there's a difference between you're quote unquote hating on the character or hating on Marvel and genuinely wanting them to do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so that's I think we covered all of, even though we had a long let me hit two quick stories. Madam Web, remember that?
Oh yeah.
Remember Celeste O'Connor, who you guys might know from Ghostbusters Afterlife. I don't know if you've seen that. Little black girl. I mean, not little at this point. I think she's like 23, but I think she was playing a teenager on that. So, she's been cast in an undetermined role in this Madam Web movie. So she's going to be alongside Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney. I'm going to start the speculation now that she's going to be playing Jessica Drew, even though I know that not to be true. So yeah, Celeste O'Connor in the Sony Marvel cinematic bootleg verse, or whatever you want to call it. I wish her the best.
I want to play a game where when they, when we play who do you think they're going to be playing? We live in a world where they're making a movie about El Muerto. So I'm just gonna be like, I think they're playing, and then just random people. I think that she will play
like the way Tyrese played like a random cop, yes. and Al Madrigal played like another random cop.
You know what? I think I'll pick. She will play Tippi Hedren, star of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, because why not? Why couldn't she be playing that? It's just as random as El Muerto.
Yeah, I want to live in a world where El Muerto makes more money than Morbius. I mean, it's not a high bar because I think Morbius only made like $160 million. I mean, so like,
and then at the end of El Muerto, Morbius is driving in a car, and El Muerto flies next to him and says, "I want to kill Spider-Man." And we're all like, "Wait, he could fly this whole time? What the hell?"
Whole time. Oh man, that's funny. And yeah, and the final story is that on June, I want to say June 1st, but wait till the story loads. There will be a Ms. Marvel documentary special on Disney Plus that will give some behind the scenes stuff about Ms. Marvel before it releases on June. Yeah, it is June 1st. On June 9th. Yes,
that sounds right.
So, or maybe June 8th. That feels right. This week.
I love that. And
wait.
This
sorry.
is
apologies for the technical difficulties. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I said I love that. I love the rollout that Ms. Marvel is getting. And I wish that America Chavez got that rollout because I see that it's possible, and I love it. I think that this is going to be huge. I'm really rooting for Ms. Marvel. I think it's going to be really great.
I am. So here's the tough line that I'm walking on right now. Like I love the character, rooting for the show, rooting for the actress, rooting for the character, rooting for it all. Still not sold on the whole power change. Because, and again, it maybe it's for a very stupid reason, but I just think that I believe that Ms. Marvel is at the same level at this point in the importance of Marvel to like the other young heroes. She's probably the number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number one or 1A with Miles Morales.
Right.
But in terms of, since Marvel doesn't own the rights to Miles Morales that we know of, that puts her at the number one. So I just don't have a lot of evidence that you can have a top tier character and then just randomly switch that character's powers.
Well,
where you've already had the character like in other incarnations showing those powers.
Well, I kind of I saw a couple of the sort of preview images or whatever, and I don't want to claim I'm just going based off of what I saw, and I may be wrong, but it seems like there may have been some of that kept, like some of the body morphing ability kept as like sort of a synergy to make it more visually like an energy, like yes, also there's an energy aspect to it, but I think there also might have been some sort of body morphing as well. Like I saw one picture and it looked like underneath the sort of sheath of energy, her
Right.
hand actually expanded as well. So like, I think there's a way to square that circle if they wanted to, but
And that's the thing. I mean, I hope they do.
Mhm.
But if they don't,
yeah.
then we're dealing with a situation where there's a video game, there are cartoons, there
Hmm.
are, all these like, and this is stuff for kids, right? This is a
Yeah.
character that is supposed to be for the
They're the
younger generation. You
who are going
know,
to be the
you
characters.
spent you spent a lot of time like saying to the core fan base, this is who Miss Marvel is,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's like, no, actually she's this.
Hmm.
I I just think the consistency is important.
It is absolutely. I like I say, I hope that obviously they wanted to do something that was more visually, I guess, dynamic or whatever, even though her power is pretty freaking visually dynamic. Like, she can, grow to kaiju size and expand her body and do all this other kind of, you know, visually sort of bombastic uh
Yeah,
and stuff. But
Mhm.
and
obviously
I
they wanted to make her shiny. So
yeah, and I've never been persuaded by the notion that it's like, well, you need to do this in order to show that she's, on the same level of like a Captain Marvel or
literally, I think that sort of is at the root of it. That you kind of want to have, not necessarily that she's at the same level, because again in the comics you see she's really freaking powerful, but just kind of that her abilities have a similar root, I guess, especially given that Inhumans is not a thing anymore. Like they
yeah,
tried
but
to make Bitch happen and that didn't work. So
sure, but I mean, but I think but I think that to think that that's necessary
it's not.
is like sort
It's
of
not.
undermines her
Yeah,
character.
right.
Yeah.
It does. I'm like literally my only kind of voicing here is just we don't have the optimal situation, and I'm like really crossing my fingers, like Miss Marvel level, like twirling my fingers, hoping that it doesn't backfire, because the potential
Yeah,
is there. Like obviously fans are not really like in love
yeah,
with change at all, but especially with a character, um, you know, just something that's considered very crucial to the character.
yeah.
It's
But and the thing is, again, I think that Iman Vellani is going to kill it in
Yeah.
yeah.
her portrayal,
Yeah.
but I think that when you're dealing with like a fairly new character,
Mhm.
like I think that for a lot of people, their bar for success is lower.
And not only is it lower, like they will kind of focus more, at least what I've noticed, they will probably focus kind of more on the things that they didn't like than the things that they did.
Mm.
Oh
Like,
no, 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 no. But I'm not saying that. I'm more saying that it's like for me, the bar is not Spider-Man, because
right.
who can be Spider-Man, right? But
Yeah.
like the same way part of like in the discussions that we had about America Chavez, where I
Hmm.
was looking at who America Chavez could have been, and then
Hmm.
I saw who America Chavez was, and I was like, they missed the mark. There were other people who were like, no, I mean she was fine. And it's like, but she's fine because you don't think much of America Chavez.
Right.
Right. Right.
Like you're looking at it as like, yeah, for like a young character that I don't really read any, or
Hmm.
invest that much into emotionally. Like
She
she
was
was
all right.
she was all right. But
Yeah.
it's like if that's your character, if that's
Hmm.
someone that you really think is like the future of Marvel, where a lot of these that's the thing about remember we guys, if we were all reading comics in the all new, all different era, You
Mhm.
know, they were positioned as like as next up, like
Yeah,
Right.
the next torchbearers
they were
for
the team right along with Mighty Thor and Captain America.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we saw the potential, and you know, there was some concern that Marvel kind of like, you know, pulled back a little bit in terms of pushing those characters to the
Mhm.
forefront. But when we heard that those characters were coming to the MCU, we all thought that that meant that, you know, great, there's an opportunity to put these characters back on the map and make them a big deal again. And if what happens is they all get all get positioned as like second tier,
Yeah.
Mhm.
then what was it all for?
Yeah. I
Right.
agree.
Yeah.
I
It,
yeah, I find it frustrating when people are like, yeah, you know, America Chavez was fine. She was, you know, I thought she was perfectly charming and whatever. And it's like, yeah, but did you understand that she's supposed to be like, what if Rosie Perez was Supergirl? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what she's supposed to be. And did you miss that, right? Because there's no way you got that if you weren't familiar with that character to begin with. Like that, she's supposed to be incredibly powerful and incredibly New Eurekan, incredibly,
Right.
you know, and
Exactly.
incredibly almost to the point of being cocky. Like she is
Yeah.
that confident. You didn't get any of that. So, like, yeah, you might have
Yeah.
thought she was fine
Like,
for the story they
yeah,
were telling,
like
but
the same things we're saying about Captain Marvel, like the same things that like people like when they think Captain Marvel, like, you know, powerhouse, like cocky, brick house, super, whatever,
mhm.
like that's America.
mm-hmm,
But she's
exactly.
younger and she's Spanish.
Right. All
Like,
right, guys, I have to go.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
All
It's
right,
an
no
early
problem.
exit for me today.
But thanks for joining us,
All
Randy.
right.
We're gonna hold it down. We're gonna keep on pushing. We're gonna dive into the racial draft business. Uh, let the people know where they can find you. Oh, guess not. Where you can find Carlos at Carlos Freitas Jr. on Twitter. And yeah, let's go. Let's go into the racial draft business. What did you have? Do you have any big thoughts about the week?
um, I was not a fan of how certain polls turned out, but
I'm
yeah.
sure you were not. Um, but as far as the picks,
Well, I mean, I honestly, I was kind of, I sort of dazed out just because I had to like, I was doing my own personal reading and stuff,
all
but
right. So I'll
but
run through
that,
the picks for you, and you give me you know, initial as soon as you hear it, thumbs up, thumbs down, or
mhm,
thumbs in the middle. I'll give you the thumbs in the middle option. All right.
okay,
The Swanamana delegation kicked us off with Amulet, Fadi Fadala.
thumbs up,
The Polynesian delegation gave us Beta Ray Bill.
thumbs in the middle,
The white delegation gave us Maxwell Lord.
thumbs up, yeah,
The South Asian delegation, Jason Blood, the demon.
yeah, thumbs up,
The Native American delegation, Lunella Lafayette, Moon Girl.
thumbs down on principle, but thumbs up for the tenacity.
The multiracial delegation, Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Well, I'll skip you. I mean, we already know. Thumbs up. The East Southeast Asian delegation, Jimmy Woo.
Yeah, thumbs up.
The Jewish delegation, Ant-Man.
Which Ant-Man?
Oh, sorry, Scott Lang. My.
Yeah, yeah, thumbs up.
And Hector Ayala, the White Tiger for the Latinx delegation.
Thumbs up.
We just spent, but yeah. So I mean, that's the rundown for the week, and we can go character by character and see how things are shaking out. We might as well start with Amulet. He's a fairly new character. I believe he was introduced in 2020 by Saladin Ahmed. He is I want to say he's Lebanese, and his powers. Yeah, I think his creator's from Dearborn, Michigan, and his powers is that manifest using the Nazar symbol. I couldn't pull up an actual like wiki on him. I had to pull up a like an article about him.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, have you read a lot of stories with Amulet in it?
The only excuse me, the only one that I saw that I read because I'm not currently reading Miss Marvel. but I did read his crossover with Miles Morales.
Oh yeah,
And
that was fairly recent.
yeah, and I mean, he's been written by the same writer. So yeah, I think it's a really cool character, and definitely like I stand to see more of him. Yeah.
I mean, around his Marvel side, this is a character whose powers connect to his culture,
Mhm.
or to her culture, and it's like, yeah, because was created that way by the character with an amulet, his people, artifact
Yeah.
that connects to evil spirits, and he's trying to ward off evil spirits using the things that the amulet
Hmm.
manifests.
Yeah.
Basically, there's a little energy projection guy
Yeah.
who might not get to exist because his powers might be too similar to Ms. Marvel in the
I mean,
MCU.
I, frankly, I feel like he might be sort of the I don't know. It's very he's sort of the Layla El Foley to Kamala Khan's Mark Spector. I don't know. Like, I mean,
I
'cause
mean, fingers crossed if that's the
they could have
direction they
sort of,
go in a season two.
yeah. I mean, I feel like they could have maybe similar power sets, and then that obviously you kind of have them show different versions of that, like different versions of magic that we've seen in the MCU. So, I mean, hopefully they don't exclude the possibility of bringing him in because he's pretty cool. Like the origin of his power is like it is based in his culture and it is based on sort of a spiritual or mystical aspect. So, I mean, if they leave that door open, that's certainly one of the good things that can come out of this radical shift of Kamala Khan's powers.
Hmm. Maybe. I mean, I guess I just worry that they wouldn't want to make her less special.
Hmm.
So if they decide to introduce him, it's going to be like down the line once they've made sure that she's the
Right, right,
you
right,
know which, and to be fair, I mean, this isn't the same because his powers aren't similar to hers, but
right.
obviously they waited until she was a big deal in the comics
Hmm.
to use her to introduce him. you
Right.
know
I mean, in any like because like anytime you have sort of characters that have similar abilities that now we're going to see Kamala Khan in this show having sort of energy projecting powers. Yes, you obviously do have sort of a worry about how are you going to make this character distinct so that people don't sort of dismiss one or the other. Um, so my hope is there. I feel like she's Pakistani, he's Lebanese. Like, give us something that can kind of touch on different aspects of their culture so that they approach the use of their powers differently. And that in itself can kind of be like, okay, fine, we drew the line of where we needed to.
Right. Well, currently, with about 12 hours left, which means that, listener, by the time you hear this podcast, this may have already closed. Currently sitting at 100% approval rating. We'll see how it shakes out. Speaking of polls, we had the final outcome of the challenge where the Native American delegation conceded the challenge.
Mm.
So, in conceding the challenge, the South Asian delegation got them their red dagger, and red dagger was returned to the South Asian delegation, but currently only sitting at 54.5% approval, which is kind of fucked up. But be that as it may, uh that's where we're at. So they got their character, but they did not get their approval. Additionally, another poll result, the rich get richer, as the Latinx delegation got them. They had drafted Jessica Cruz last week, or the week before, and 100% approval rating. Bonus points up and running. You have any? I mean, I'm sure you're a fan of Jessica Cruz, are you not?
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't actually read like the Justice League where she first like showed up, and I'm not currently reading the Green Lantern stuff, but I do know her from Justice League Odyssey. She was really
Mm-hmm.
good in that. And I've seen her around, so she's not like one of the characters at the forefront of my attention, but whenever I see her, it's always a good time. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think she's I mean, I know she's popped up a few times in
Mhm.
the Justice League, not Justice League, sorry, in the Green Lantern book. But I think her story kind of had her being a Yellow Lantern for a little while, and so
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, what she's doing completely. But yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the character, so I'm glad that she gets to remain with the Latinx delegation, and hopefully, is she due to be one of the characters in the Green Lantern?
In the
Um,
purported Green Lantern HBO Max show, yes, I believe so.
okay, so we shall see how that
And,
goes.
oh, never mind. I was about to say something, but never mind.
But yeah, I'm gonna give those bonus points, those 20 bonus points for the 100% approval, and the bonus points still remain to be seen for what do you call it, for Amulet. Additionally, not even close to 90% approval is the 33% approval for Jewish Mantis. Um, I get it. I mean, a big part of Mantis's story is that she's Vietnamese. She's played by a Vietnamese actress in the movies. We didn't really get any sense from the Jewish delegation what reasoning or changes or beneficial um, things were being brought to the table by Jewish Mantis. So people were left to their own devices.
I just recently had a conversation this week where like a lot of people just like they only know her in terms of the MCU. And so like they were surprised when she showed up in the recent Marvel Voices
Oh,
Asian like celebration thing, and they were like, wait, why? Like, because they were thinking that the character was an alien and that she had been retconned as Asian to kind of have synergy with the movie. And so like a lot of people, well, I mean, maybe not a lot of people, but the folks who I spoke to were like,
mm-hmm.
oh, she's actually, like they were kind of like finding out that she was actually Vietnamese in the comics, biracial. Her
Mm-hmm.
dad is white and her mother is Vietnamese.
Yeah,
And so
admittedly, I had to do my research in order to, arrive at the same place, So,
I mean that yeah, so it seems very probable that sort of misunderstanding might have at least had some part in how the approval rating shook out.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, especially because they're if you're you kind of get it from both ends, right? You get it from, like, if you're the if the East Asian delegation, you're thinking like, well, we just got this character, and you or so you think. It feels like more and a more egregious racial draft. And then, of course, there's not there aren't too many ways that the character pops up in the books
Hmm.
for you
She
to.
she almost like whenever we see Mantis in the comic, it's almost exclusively in like a totally alien context, even though we know that she's like her origin, her ethnicity is Vietnamese. We don't like it's very recently, as far as I'm aware, literally just in that comic that we actually see, oh yeah, actually she has this sort of connection.
Right. So, as we mentioned before, Beta Ray Bill is another example, right?
Hmm.
Like, he's a horse, but he used to have a humanoid form, but although his humanoid form didn't really have too much of a racial identity. The Polynesian delegation, big fans of Beta Ray Bill. I think this is not the first season that they've drafted him, but we're still not sure what elements are brought to a specific Polynesian. Beta Ray Bill, currently sitting at 50% approval rating with a day left. So hopefully we'll hear something from Tamati and other Polynesians with what it might mean to have a Polynesian Beta Ray.
Though I wouldn't be mad if Manu Bennett voiced Beta Ray Bill in the MC. I'm just saying,
And you're right. I mean, like, especially given the fact that Taika is directing the Thor
Yeah.
movies, like,
Hmm.
him, like that just might be all you need, right? If you just get a, if you get a voice actor,
Hmm.
from like a Maori voice actor or a Polynesian voice actor, all of a sudden that's just the cultural element that it the cultural
Yeah,
element that it takes.
exactly.
But speaking of adding a cultural element to a character that definitely needed it, we have Judo Master,
Yeah.
who very racist character we talked about before. However, in Peacemaker, we got ourselves I believe, Vietnamese actor who was playing Judo
Hmm.
Master, and I think that this is a, a necessary correction. I mean, in the comics, there's a original Judo Master, and then his son is so there's an original Judo Master who has a sidekick who's Asian, and I think I forget the name of his sidekick, and then um his son becomes the new Judo Master in the modern era. So I, personally, as far as like an easy retcon would be for his Asian son to be adopted and want no parts of the racist history of
Right.
his namesake. So yeah, 100% approval rating for Southeast Asian Judo Master, and 20 bonus points for that. Oh yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Guthries. Um, Sam Guthrie only got 68% approval rating. I know you feel away, Randy.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously my case didn't prevail, but I think that,
Was there a case though?
no, I mean, I didn't go extensively into it. I mentioned just the fact of, like, I had, my family, it has sort of that, not that exact same roots, obviously, but uh, sort of a rural connection. I'll put it that way, where typically when we think of sort of like the country folks and the folks in that sort of vein, the blue collar working class folks, typically like a lot of people sort of associate it with like white people. And
Fair,
as far as farmers and all this other kind of stuff, when you think of kind of people who live in the
but
country and do all
yeah,
this stuff.
but in this instance, you had more than just they were country folks, right? Like
Mhm.
they were farmers, they were coal miners, they were
Yeah.
from Kentucky. They
Hmm.
spoke with like the like accent that like obviously it's in in text, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
but it's like it's very much like the accent that we associate with like a particular kind of like for lack of a better term, apologies for my listeners if you fall in this category, like the sort of like redneck you know archetype. And
Well, I
then
mean, yeah,
oh,
but that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like we kind of overlook, like, just I've sort of had this a bit
mhm,
of the family connection sort of made me think about it. That's why I was like, I didn't want to just grab just any old body,
yeah,
obviously. But I was thinking, like, we don't really get a whole lot of looking in terms of the black country folks
mhm,
who are in, obviously, like, my family didn't have coal miners or anything like that, so the connection is not that direct. But when you have those conversations, you kind of like look at the white folks, the
oh, for
ones,
sure, yeah, for sure. I
and so
mean,
I felt like it wasn't quite as exclusive as some people might have thought. I'm sure, there's obviously some cultural nuance that I may have missed, but it
yeah,
just didn't seem like it was something that was so far fetched.
I mean, I think that I guess what I'm saying is that I think that like I think it was a hurdle to overcome,
Hmm.
especially when you add in the fact that like coal mining is like a notoriously white um profession. I looked it up. It's like there's less than 5% black coal miners, you
Mm.
know, like so you almost would have needed to like create a backstory where like the Guthries were the black coal mining family, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then like I feel like there was a way that you could have sold it, but it would have required you to like really like push it, you
Yeah.
know. It's
Yeah.
like if you had pushed it with Sam, and then you would have been able to push it with the rest of the Guthries. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like it almost felt like because you didn't push it with Sam, every subsequent Guthrie just made it less and less likely that
Well, except two. That was a very odd outcome. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
I
I
think
guess.
I think it's because those are the Guthries that are actually in X-Men.
Right. I mean, like, it's okay. So yeah, I honestly I didn't make a huge case for it because again, it wasn't like something that was so such a home run sort of connection to make, obviously. But I did think that it was plausible, and I was hoping and kind of brought it up a couple of days later that like, hey guys, don't forget, Boy on the
Yeah.
Road, But
But it's as I was looking up these Guthries, because I had to post these. Like as I was looking up these Guthries, if you look at their stories, they're so bad. Like, I mean, not bad in general, but bad from the perspective of like trying to have them be black.
mhm.
Because you had people who were like pretending to be mutants because they wanted to be like part of the like they wanted to be part of like the cool kids,
Mm.
like I mean, and that's pretty damn white, Randy. Like it's like I want to be more oppressed. Like it's not enough of a marginalized person, you know. So like I said, I think you would have had to I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility, but I
Mhm.
do think that like it's not something that jumps off the page
Yeah,
as like, oh yeah, I can definitely see it,
yeah, yeah. That's fair.
you know. But still, you know, it's going to be weird though, because now we're dealing with Black Sam Guthrie and Jewish Roberto da Costa. um
Mhm.
that's gonna be weird tandem. Like I
I
also
I mean, it's still a swirl. Still,
well yeah,
it's-
but here's the thing. I don't know if this version of Roberto da Costa is not black, because he can still be black.
true, true.
So it's just a matter of like one's from the country and one's from the, got little bit of money in South America.
Yeah, that is a very interesting,
Mhm.
like just picture in my head. That's very interesting.
But let's push on. I mean, we're at the white delegation, and here's look. I know that we like to rag on white delegation, white people, and all that stuff.
Oh wait,
Um,
I did get my points for them too, right? Paige
we
and
didn't
little
get to
baby
it.
Gus.
We have not gotten to it yet.
Okay.
um, Maxwell Lord,
Hmm.
the rich white man who has the power to mind control people. I
Yep.
mean, and he doesn't really care for Wonder Woman because she's a woman. I feel like I mean, I know he was played by Pedro Pascal in
No, it's giving Caucasian. Yeah.
it's given so well done white delegation for finding you the right kind of white man to retain and protect. So
And I know
he's
there's a lot of protective picks this round, I think.
I
Wasn't it?
mean, it feels right though. I mean, listen, we did
Yeah.
a lot of drafting this year. Um, like not that there can't be still some gems in there for race bending purposes,
Mhm.
but get your protected picks, get your
Yeah.
characters that you feel like belong, and get your approval points.
Yeah.
Speaking of that very phenomenon, 100% approval rating. Well, this one is a tricky. I think we talked about it last week. Lucas Bishop, for the multiracial delegation. They split the baby because he is technically a a Aboriginal character,
Mhm.
but Black people claimed him,
Yeah.
and the multiracial delegation was like, "Hey, how about both?"
I honestly, I believe he's both. I think because like his story is in the future, so he has a connection to Gateway, but he also has a connection to Storm.
Right, but I think that was adoptive. I think his family,
I forget. I'm not sure on that, but I think that
because what happens is
might ethnically be both.
his family moves to the, like, I don't believe he's related to Storm, is what I'm saying. Like
Uh,
I think his family moves to the States,
mhm,
and then Storm ends up being kind of like a elder,
mhm.
and that helps to raise him, which is
Hmm.
black, which is very black.
I mean, yeah.
it's
I
it's definitely
honestly,
it's definitely given black community.
yeah, there definitely was like I don't think it was clarified if they were like, but it yeah, there was a connection there, and so I feel like that's definitely something that for years we've kind of had uh black folks just kind of he's invited to the cookout, so you know
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, black delegation uh didn't get a big L for that, because he still got a little piece. So I need to figure out how to make that, like, how to allocate points in the future, but not in the present. In the present, 20 bonus points for the 100% approval for Bishop.
maybe,
Additionally,
maybe you can give like 20 points to the multiracial, but then like 5 points to whoever delegations he chooses to mix. Just
interesting.
saying, just putting it out there.
I mean, that's real strategy there, because what delegations you choose to mix might mess up might mess up the
Yeah,
approval.
right.
You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden it's like all the picks are like racially ambiguous.
We don't know
but
who their parents are. Hey.
but maybe that, because then it creates the incentive for the different delegations to get involved, right? You're like, oh wait, I might get a piece of the I might get a piece of the approval if he's part black. All right.
Exactly.
All right, we'll talk about it for the next season. We might be able to make it work. I might have to lift the scores to 25. um but anyway, so yeah, currently, I mean, you're a big Justice League Dark person, right?
Yes, I am.
So tell the people about Jason Blood.
Um, Actually, he was one of the ones I didn't really care about. But I will say that he has been basically inhabited by this demon called Ichigan, and he's able to evoke the powers of this demon by saying his little rhyme, "Gone, gone, the form of man, arise the demon Ichigan," and like he has kind of hellish demonic powers and stuff like that. And I believe he also is like immortal, or he's nigh immortal, like he has
Mm-hmm.
extended longevity and stuff like that. And he's actually, if I recall, he's kind of been uh on both the on their team at some point, but also kind of their antagonists at some points as well. So very
Yeah.
interesting character, I would say.
Right. And I mean, obviously, well, not obviously, but I mean, I know one part of his story is that his, like, story goes back to kind of like Camelot and like those times,
Mm-hmm.
but he was still othered back then. So I think that given the history with, or not the history, but the murky history with South Asians and England, the idea of a South Asian Jason Blood, like, it's kind of intriguing, especially if
Yeah.
he's kind of like on the lighter side,
Mhm.
where he still is a little bitter about all the bigotry,
Yeah.
the centuries of bigotry, but he's and in this incarnation, one of the things that I've been peeping is that a lot of Justice League Dark folks on the brown side, not the there's been
Justice League Dark Skin. Yes,
exactly.
I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
mad.
So yeah, I'm here for it as well. And the people currently sitting at 100% with a couple days left. Hopefully they stick with it. So
Like I
let's keep
think a couple of years ago, I think the fan cast that I saw going around was like people wanted Chiwetel Ejiofor to play Jason Blood. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I hadn't thought of it, but okay.
I mean, we got a Black Constantine now, and the that's been cast. I'm here for Justice League Dark.
And,
If that's
and
the direction that they want to go with.
and it's wild to me that they didn't try to skimp. They didn't do like the CW diversity where they got the lightest possible Negro. Like they got like really dark skinned black guy for Constantine.
Oh no, we're saving that for Zatanna. You understand. I mean, she's gonna be South Asian, but she's gonna be very, very light, very, very light.
Yeah.
But shout out to South Asian delegation. Keep on plugging away. The Native American delegation. What you weren't here last week, I don't believe. So what were your thoughts about Native American Teddy Altman, Hulkling?
I mean, you have to really square the circle. Like, I mean, that's sort of why I didn't really touch on trying to pick Martian Manhunter, even though he's been largely portrayed by black actors, black face characters. But yeah, like you can kind of just sort of wave it away, given the fact that he's a shape-shifting character. And so, you know, it's really sort of difficult to put a definite cultural aspect there. He could fit anywhere, literally. He could shape shift. So
I think one thing that does does work to Teddy's benefit that doesn't work to John Jones's benefit is that Teddy was like raised here. Like I don't believe he finds out until later that he's an alien.
Yeah, that's true.
So in that respect, anytime you have someone who kind of powers develop later, you can say that they kind of established their cultural roots in a community, and then they find out they're an alien, but it doesn't mean that they're the fact of them being an alien makes them less of a part of that community. But in the situation with Martian Manhunter, this is a grown ass 100-some-odd-year-old Martian coming here.
Yeah, he's a very interesting case. Like I believe it was Ordway who wrote his comic back in like 1998, and his comic was like, actually I shapeshift and I sort of am numerous different people living across. He wants to understand. He wants to better understand humanity, so he assumes various different forms: old lady, little kid, and like all these other different forms in numerous different locations around the world. And I mean, it would be really hard to make a case like, oh yeah, he's obviously a black guy. But,
exactly. I mean, if anything, that sounds like a pretty white thing to do.
Right. Exactly.
That's some racial cosplay. It's like, oh, I get to be whatever I want. That's a tough call. Like that's I mean, that's not challengeable, but that's still a situation where I might side eye you and be like, really? If with that backstory, at least the one that they like sort of kind of tried to squeeze in with the CW, if it's kind of like, well, my people were oppressed, and I feel like it's only right that if I'm gonna take a form, take the form that I identify with.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Toriano didn't like really give us a lot to work with regard to his Hulkling. But the people were just cool with Hulkling, it seems like. So 100% approval rating for Native American Hulkling. And I guess. I mean, it's one of the that's one of
Maybe they're like hoping that we get a brown person playing him like his human mean in the
right.
MCU.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I approved of it. But like, you know, I was still kind of like
Yeah.
I'm not really seeing it. I'm just kind of like saying better than a random white dude, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes. Better than a random white dude. But moving on, another pick from the Native American delegation. This one slightly more controversial though. Um, this would be Moon Girl. Randy, when you heard about the Moon Girl pick, what was your first thought?
I frankly, I'm still kind of bitter that I'm not getting a whole lot of feedback from the black delegation in terms of these picks and stuff that I'm making. So part of me wants to be kind of bitter and be like, yeah, good, take all the black characters, it's fine. but but um I really can't get out of my mind the fact that they went so far as to make Lunella Lafayette this little black girl who, again, we don't have a whole lot of
Black female characters, we
yeah,
definitely don't.
prominent black women female characters. We don't really have a whole lot of those, and to make her the smartest person in the world, as especially since Marvel has this long history of like doing this sort of intelligence ranking thing where like
Mm-hmm.
Cho is the eighth smartest and Reed Richards is he's up there and Valeria Richards. It's mostly white folks and mostly white guys. But yeah, so to see her there is a really powerful thing and a really profound thing.
I
So
agree.
yeah,
And that's why it's kind of a loss for the black delegation, even though we got some clarification from Toriano
mhm,
that that to the extent that she's Native American that with roots in Africa,
mhm,
the Gullah Geechee people. So I think that's kind of a weird, tricky territory where um, outwardly people would probably still see her as a black girl,
mhm.
and it would just be something that she herself would have to probably continually clarify to
Yeah,
people.
yeah, and I've been graced by a couple of delegations that when they get certain black characters, they're like, okay, fine, we're you didn't get her technically, but there's still a black, a person who is kind of tied to African ancestry still, even though they're not directly just straight up African American, which is
Right.
fine. I, I'm
Yeah.
not bitter about it.
But for our conversational purposes, the L is still the L. The
Yeah.
Lunel. um, little black girls.
Already got a lot of L's in her name anyway. We don't have to
Exactly.
go very far for that
Yeah,
one.
the little black girls don't get to look up to Lunella and be like, that's representation. So I mean, maybe in a future season you'll circle her and make sure that she finds her way back.
Is she does have an animated show coming out, and I think she might have a couple of comic things goings on.
Yeah,
So
I think she's got like a whole little mini thing happening.
yeah, so we shall see.
All right, so let's currently, sorry, I buried the lead a little bit. Current approval rating is sitting at 71.4, or sorry, 71.5. So, the people are not amused to the fullest extent. So,
Yeah.
so you at least have that. Back to the 100% approval rating club. Kingo from the Eternals, who you might know played by Kumail Nanjiani.
Mhm.
100% approval rating. We'll get those points. Sorry. 100% approval rating for the white delegation and Bonesaw McGraw, which, I mean, that was kind of cool. I like Bonesaw. Another pick, another black-ish pick, if you will. The Mr. Terrific from the from the multiracial delegation. But
Mhm.
you know, black, white, and Asian. If I had to guess, black part because you know, respect. You can't have like he's not interesting if he's not like at least a little black. Like, I mean, plus he's like, isn't he like a gold medal athlete? You know, like
yeah,
Olympic athlete in multiple sports. So yeah, there's the athleticism of the blackness. You know, he's smart, so Asian. There we go. and he called himself terrific. So there's the cornball whiteness.
Yeah. Okay.
It feels right. I feel like I'd be more likely to believe that a brother calls himself Mr. Terrific because he's got white parents. He's got at least one white parent who's like terrific. But I don't know. I mean, look, I'm a fan. I am a fan of the character. Here's the problem with Mr. Terrific. We've talked about this before.
Mhm.
Like, I think that people overstate like how good of a character he is on paper versus like how good of a character he could be if he was sort of pushed.
Yeah. I
You know,
mean, again, this stems back to the Batman problem, but
sure.
yeah, he is a character who has a tremendous intellect. You know, he's a polymath. Like he really is just well developed in a lot of different areas. And he's an inventor. He's a very interesting character, but we don't really see a lot of that because he's almost exclusively like in sort of this support role or group role. We don't really see a whole, like he has had one 5-issue solo thing, and that's it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like I feel like if he existed in Marvel, he would basically be T'Challa, right?
He would probably,
Without
yeah.
without the Wakanda of it, right? But he'd be American T'Challa.
He,
Like
he would sort of like square the circle between T'Challa and Tony Stark because he's American. He's still American,
sure.
So I feel like that would be sort of the sweet spot between those two, where like if maybe you don't care for sort of the mysticism and the all-in Africanness of T'Challa.
No, but I feel like he'd have to be in order to be Mr. Terrific. He
Mhm.
like low key, T'Challa's smarter than Tony Stark, right?
Yes.
Like
High key, very yes.
yeah. I mean, the only reason it's not hierarchy is because white people would get mad about it, right?
Yeah.
But like low key, even Tony Stark recognizes that T'Challa's smarter than him.
Mm-hmm.
But T'Challa has enough kind of like other stuff going on that he's
That you
not
can focus
constantly
on that, right?
Yeah, he's not constantly flexing on how much smarter than he is, right?
Yeah.
And even like obviously Reed Richards is Reed Richards,
Mm-hmm.
but so Reed Richards gets to do Reed Richards things, but
Right.
but he's in the same league as Reed Richards.
Yes.
And the way that Marvel sets up its stories is you can have these people. It's like we're intellectual peers, and we respect each other, even if like I'm smarter than you, or I'm a better fighter than you, or I like focus on robotics, or I focus on like theoretical science. Like there's a way that they can basically all sit at the table together and be like we're like we can quibble about who's slightly smarter, but we're all kind of at the same tier.
Yeah.
DC doesn't really do that well.
They're very hierarchical over on that side.
Like you don't get a lot of like Batman like you get a little bit of it, but you don't get like Batman, Mr. Terrific, and some of the other scientific minds like the who's the Atom.
Ryan is Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer.
Yeah, Ray Palmer, because like I read something a few years back where Ray Palmer was supposed to be like one of, if not the smartest scientist in DC. It's like, really? they never invite him to the party,
right?
Like it. Whereas like in Marvel, you would know because when the time comes when there's a problem that needs to be solved, they like put the call out, and then you see the table full of geniuses try to figure things out.
Yeah,
you don't like DC doesn't really put respect on Michael Holt's name.
I mean, yeah, DC, it is very clear to me. Again, back to sort of the Batman problem, but we have this idea that if you kind of give the character too much shine, then it sort of takes away from someone else, and so you have sort of like everybody sort of in their own respective lane, in their own respective corner. And when you have the paragons established, then nobody really is allowed to sort of step up. Like if you have sort of a similar power set or a similar skill set, then you're allowed to be cool over in your own little corner. But when you start interacting with the other ones, man, we got to pull that back a little bit. We can't let you get too much be shown to be too cool or too sort of whatever. And that's why it surprised me in Strange Adventures when we kind of got to see a little glimpse of Mr. Terrific having a better understanding of language and having sort of a better understanding of the situation there than Batman did.
Well, that's one of the things that made Strange Adventures so great. And it wasn't lost on me that you had someone who used to write Batman, kind of give that cosign. Yeah. Where it's like, Batman, like if more writers did that, this is a white writer, this isn't even a black writer, but if more writers did that, where they were like, look, we know the reputation that Batman has, but like Batman respects this guy. So so you should too. Like too often it's a situation where it's like Batman doesn't respect anybody. So because Batman doesn't respect anyone, if you rock with Batman, then you're like, but obviously Batman's smarter than him.
Right. And that's what it always boils down to. It's like, okay, well, the character is not worth being respected unless Batman respects him, which, I don't know. It sucks. It's very arbitrary, very weird that we kind of had, like, we had years ago where Batman, he tried to recruit Vixen for his team. He was like, I can't do this without you. And that really didn't translate into a whole lot. So, I mean, they kind of
they'll half-heartedly try.
Right. They'll sort of, give sort of the platitudes of like, see, Batman likes her, you should like her too. And really it boils down to maybe they just kind of said that for the purpose of that particular story, not just generally overall that character becoming more prominent.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a consistency, even like, we both loved the Batman and the Outsiders book, because it did feel like Batman was putting respect on Black Lightning's name. Yeah. But how much did that carry over into other stories?
He is still a background character. He does not have a solo, and Outsiders is like, kind of trucking along, here and there, showing up in things, but yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the things that we constantly harp on when we talk about like why DC has so much more trouble elevating its characters. It's things like that. But all that is to say that maybe you take Mr. Terrific's complexion down a little bit, Maybe his prominence, listen, they cast a guy, he's a little, you cast a guy for Mr. We've already talked about the fact that I think Sterling K. Brown would be an awesome Mr. Terrific in
Mhm.
live action. But
Yeah.
maybe it's just you know, someone that the white fan base can relate to a little bit, and all of a sudden Mr. Terrific goes up in importance. I'm not saying, just saying. Speaking of, well, that's not a good transition at all. Shout out to Argal Charlotte, from all the way in the Philippines, always blessing us with cool fan art. She, on behalf of the Southeast Asian delegation, that was one of our guest picks a few weeks ago, where she put in for Elastigirl from the Doom Patrol. You've watched Doom Patrol, right?
Yes. Yep.
What do you think of Rita Farr, uh, uh, Elastigirl?
She is a powerhouse, and like, of the team, she is by far the most impressive to me. Like, she's just a very cool character, and I think I mentioned it on the show before. I really like how decades ago they were really putting respect on her name. Like, you had to kind of, as far as a Jean Grey, she had to kind of build up her power over the decades, and it sort of had that course correction. Um, you know, and Sue Storm, she kind of started off as like just turning invisible, and over time you got to see her be more powerful. But from the start, Rita Farr is a character. She was going kaiju mode, fighting the giant whatever monster, and like shrinking down and going and like being the clutch critical character in a lot of the missions that they had early on. And so, all the respect to that character.
Okay, cool. Well, we got ourselves a Southeast Asian Elastigirl, and they got themselves bonus points for that. Amazing. You saw the picture, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It's pretty. I
Hmm.
mean, both both color and black and white.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, that's cool beans. Cool for them. Um, Unfortunately, it came in a little too late to affect the approval rating, so no extra push in that respect. Speaking of approval ratings, though, your boy Uatu the Watcher,
Hmm.
um, currently sitting at 92.3% approval rating, with a few days to go. But here's your opportunity to continue to do the hard sell on Black Watcher.
I mean, we already have a Wakanda, but it's even more satisfying to have like a race of folks who at the very beginning like are sort of this transcendently smart and powerful race that are like um so powerful and so advanced that they've sort of had to step back and not interfere because they've seen the consequences of when they interfere, and that basically every other people that they've encountered sort of didn't know how to handle them. you know and so I really, we all kind of had our feelings about what if, but generally I believe they were positive.
Mhm.
And
And yeah, and people like Jeffrey Wright,
hmm.
who's the voice cast, and people still do want to see him, um, live action casting of
Yeah.
the Watcher. So yeah, I mean, we might as well claim. I mean, who knows if we can claim the full Watcher species, but we can at least claim Uatu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moving on, more 100% approval. This one was a little tricky though. Hisaku Ichiki, aka Armor,
Hmm.
one, not too, there are too many prominent East Asian mutants, but they lost one.
Mm.
Obviously, there are East Asians in the Polynesian islands, so maybe we have to talk to Tom T about maybe she still gets to be Japanese, but
Hmm.
originating in the Pacific Islands. But the people people were fine with it. The people gave it 100% approval rating. So I have to give them the bonus points. Speaking of the Southeast Asian delegation, they went safe with the defensive pick of Jimmy Woo. Jimmy Woo. I have to admit, I thought we'd have seen him again after the way that he killed it on WandaVision.
I still feel like the potential is there. Whether or not they realize it or whether or not they act on it is a whole other issue. But the potential is there for an Agents of Atlas live action adaptation. It should happen. And I feel like that will be a thing that a lot of fans didn't know they wanted. So here's hoping that he's not remaining in the background as that just kind of the FBI guy. Like hopefully this is us seeing his trajectory towards greater prominence.
I would have loved a cameo since he's based out of San Francisco and Shang-Chi was based out of San Francisco. That would have felt like a perfect place to have a Jimmy Woo cameo.
And not only are they both based out of San Francisco, they both have evil, kind of heritage that sort of wants to set them up to be the new leader of the evil thing. Like,
yeah. Well, I'm saying even if they weren't sure what the trajectory of the Jimmy Woo character was going to be, they could have easily slipped in,
yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, like we kind of have seen ever since the Protectors thing years ago in the comics that we have sort of seen that sort of brotherhood and kinship between Shang-Chi and Jimmy Woo. And they don't always see eye to eye, but I mean, yeah. So I was hoping that just like you, that will make an appearance, but
yeah. I mean, the hope is that wherever he goes next, since he did have the experience with Sword, that like he'll have like more authority in his next thing.
Yeah, and speaking of which, did we ever get a confirmation about whether whether Shang-Chi's sister, the Shaling spinoff thing was an actual thing that was happening, or was that just a rumor?
I think it's still a rumor. But yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, because that could be a place that Atlas could play a role.
Yeah, that, or I have been me and the rest of the Wong Hive have been hoping that Wong would get something solo or
look, Wong is showing up everywhere.
Right.
So
like either solo or at least in sort of a prominent leadership position. And I feel like he would be a really great in for that as well, because he deals with sort of the mystic aspects, and so does Atlas. So
yeah, we'll see. We'll see where that goes. I mean, we know we're going to see Wong next in She-Hulk, so we'll get some insight into where just how many pies he has his fingers in. So now we're into the Guthrie portion of the show. Let me go ahead and scroll my spreadsheet because there's a lot of Guthries to get through. However, we will start with Thomas Guthrie and his 50% approval rating. Lucinda, the matriarch, and her 50% approval rating. Lucas, who I believe is the uncle. Josiah Guthrie got 100% approval rating. Now Josiah, is that the one that's the Icarus?
That's the baby. I think they're fine with a Guthrie being Black as long as like maybe he's adopted or something. Like we have to rework the backstory for that one. So
okay. I did. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and award 20. Paige Guthrie, Husk. I mean, I think that makes sense because it's like, she loses her skin all the time. So maybe one of the skins,
as long as she can take that skin off, sure, we'll let her do that.
I mean, it's right there. It's right there for her. It's like, Oh, you mean like she have different skins with different races? Maybe she's not always black, but she's black on the inside. I mean, I'm here. I'm here for Husk. I see you. I see you, sister. 80% approval rating for Melody Guthrie. So 33% approval rating for Jeb Guthrie. Surprisingly, 33% approval rating for Joelle Guthrie. 33% approval rating for Lewis Guthrie. 33% approval rating for Elizabeth Guthrie. And 33% approval rating for Sissy Guthrie. That one hurts. That one hurts. But again, hard to make. You didn't do like specialized cases for what.
Yeah, that and frankly, I mean, my gambit worked. Like at least I was like, okay, if I get a large family, then at least maybe one or two will give me some bonus. They can't
They can't deny. They can't deny. Oh, what's the saying? It's like you can't get us all.
I would have really been hurt if it just down the line was just like, nope, 33%, 45%, 22%. Like it would really just hurt.
I feel you. I see how you played it. Okay. Speaking of approvals, this is a defensive pick because smart strategy. Adriana Tomaz. Very tricky narrative history with this character. Part of the Shazam lore. Part of the Shazam lore. She gets the powers of Isis, which not those powers. The power of the god Isis, and yeah, she we saw her with a slightly reworked name in Legends of Tomorrow, Zari Tomaz, before she was Zari Tarasi. We are about to see her in Black Adam, played by why am I forgetting the actress's name? I apologize. Sarah Shahi. Slightly different because Sarah Shahi, I believe, is Egyptian, whereas the actress who played Zari is Iranian, but still Swana.
That is very interesting. Did they I vaguely remembered it until you brought it up, but did they cast her? Because I think her she has a brother as well, right? Who's like the power of Osiris. So did they cast her, or did they cast him as well?
For the movie for Black Adam?
Huh?
For Black Adam?
Yeah.
I don't believe they have. But I don't. But Sarah Shahi's more of like a known commodity, so it might just be that she was cast and that made news, but there was not a lot of information about her brother.
That was like Billy Batson had Freddie and Mary as kind of like his left and right hand, and then until recently, conversely, Black Adam had Isis and Osiris. So
yeah, okay, and that's what I'm saying. That may still exist, but it just may be that because
bigger name and
bigger name, exactly. Because even with the Shazam family, that was held back. It wasn't a big part of the marketing. It's something that played out in the movie. So we shall see. But in the meanwhile, the 100% approval rating gives bonus points. Speaking of bonus points, shout out to our girl Charter. She did some fan art of Layla. Yeah. Layla Faouli, Scarlet Scarab.
Yeah.
Go ahead. She's not just doing fan art for the East Southeast Asian delegation. She spreads the wealth around.
Would have been nice if she had done a Black Cannonball, but not that I'm complaining, of course. I just
gotta hit that at button. Gotta next pick. You just gotta say, hey, you interested?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, next pick seems a little on point, right? A little. This one is well. Look, full disclosure, we had to have at least one auto draft with the supplemental draft. Not everyone can get their picks in on time because that's just how things work. And what that led to is me, commissioner's choice, auto drafting based on the fact that our boy Poor Rudd, member of the tribe,
Mm-hmm.
so Jewish delegation, got themselves an Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And they also got via racial draft family chaining Cassie Lang.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are solid acquisitions for the Jewish delegation.
Yeah.
We will see. We will see how the people feel about those picks. But I mean, who doesn't love Jewish Ant-Man?
And I keep forgetting as far as like the supplemental draft points or whatever, but I do know that we're going to be seeing an Ant-Man, I believe his 60th anniversary thing coming up soon. So he's gonna be
Yeah, but no FCL points for that. But
uh,
maybe some news will break, or maybe we'll find out about Cassie showing up in Young Avengers. Who knows? We've still got 10 weeks.
yeah.
A lot of time for news to break. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the family chain of Berad Tarazi from Legends of Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
100% approval for him. I really like that actor, and I really like that character. I've never seen that actor in anything else, but as per Legends Tomorrow, where actors really get to show different ranges of different versions of
Yeah.
themselves, and doppelgangers and robots and time travel versions, and the timeline changes.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope he shows up in something else.
Yeah, we have like a number of like one if you complain about anything about Arrowverse, one of the things that you probably aren't complaining about is the OC characters. Like people really like Sarah Lance as a character. They really like um Berad and Zari, and just so I hope that we get to see, just like I'm hoping we get to see Layla El Faouly over on Marvel side. I hope we get to see Zari and Berad show up on DC, in their comics, because it's not as if you're you're overloaded and overflowing with Muslim and Swana representation.
For sure, for sure. And that brings us to the final pick of the round, the aforementioned White Tiger, Hector Ayala.
Mm-hmm.
We said a lot about him already. We talked about how it's very. I'm so glad that the Caucasians didn't get themselves a white tiger, because I'm sure he was on the big board. I'm sure he was on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that Carlos finally made a strong defensive pick, secured the man, and maybe he'll do some family chaining and get some the other white tigers. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, I can't complain. Obviously, it was brand new pick, under 24 hours, so the 100% might not stand, but we shall see. It should stand, but and who
I
knows? Maybe
might have to upvote this one.
yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll get some fan art, backstory, all types of things about we did a lot of like Black Panthering. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so maybe maybe we'll get an announcement, especially coming on the heels of the America Chavez and all the Namor stuff. Maybe we'll get a White Tigers in the works.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. So yeah, that I mean basically concludes our racial draft business. This was a pretty long show this time out, but I think we had a good time. I think it was all fun. I think we touched on a lot of things. We got deep into the you know some of the bigger fandom issues, but I mean, it's a holiday weekend. You guys have extra time. You guys could listen to us over the course of your Memorial Day, or while you're grilling up some steaks and whatever you grill up.
Oh, and I have one last teeny tiny piece of business, sort of news wise. Um, the Vixen webtoon comic just
Mhm.
recently came out,
Well, how is
and
that?
I've only read the first issue, and I liked it. It's off to a good start. I bring it up not merely because it's coming out as far as nerd news goes, but I had one complaint so far. Teeny
Okay.
tiny, little itty bitty complaint. They introduced the character Karen Beecher, Bumblebee,
Hmm.
and
Or
she
as I call a bumble beacher. Go on. Mhm.
for some reason she has been whitewashed, and
Wait. Completely whitewashed or just
no,
lightened?
no, she's brown, but like
Oh, they just ran her through the. They just ran her through
yeah, I
the.
mean,
Yeah.
it's happened. This is the second time that it's happened. DC superhero girls had a darker skin, and then after a while, it's like, oh, miraculously, she they scraped a little bit of the brown off. So, um, I like the comic, but I hope that there's
Now, has there been a little bit of outcry about it or no?
there has, but Bumblebee's not a hugely famous character, so obviously a lot of people may not know or may not care. And
Okay.
there's people who are obviously are like kind of the oh woke, and so they don't really care. But I feel like it was worth noting.
No,
And
definitely. Thank you.
yeah, and
Yeah, I didn't realize that the Vixen book had come out this week. I thought it was still a little bit of time before it was coming out. So thanks for the heads up.
it's a webtoon, and so it was like they tell you kind of like they tell you in advance, but they didn't really sort of bang their drum about it until the actual day that it came out.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I just wanted to mention that I want everybody, hopefully, pretty please support the thing, read it, share it with friends, and all this other stuff.
So I
Um,
mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot, Randy. Does this mean that maybe a future Vixen draft? Hmm?
I mean, yeah, I think it's possible.
Okay.
I hope that this is the start of her showing up in more things. you know, who can say it is DC? So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I want folks to support it, but I also hope that the artistic team is listening to those of us who have tuned in and are voicing our concerns on that.
Okay. Well, that's a good note to end on, listeners. You know, um, shake the table, especially for Black women, of which there are so few Black female characters that are getting shine in these comics,
Yeah.
particularly on the DC side. You know, jokes can be made about the Bumblebee IP and what comes up when you Google her. Um, but in all seriousness, you know, protect our characters and give them the opportunity to get respect on their names, and not just respect because they're a couple shades lighter. Um, Respect because they're Black. And yeah, I mean, we might as well wind it down. From there, you can find the Racial Draft at all the local podcast places. If you're hearing us now, keep hearing us at the new place, or at the same place rather. If you want to get at us a little bit more, we can find us typically at Racial Draft Pod on Twitter, Racial Dot Draft on Instagram, and Racial Draft on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at MTFIII, where every now and then I'm breaking down the 5 foundational characters that DC should be building around, and waiting for Randy to let me know that they're awesome. Randy, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter at RandyS0725, and I also use the hashtag superpower list.
Okay. Listeners, check us out next week, where we will keep bringing the Racial Draft goodness, and we will keep breaking down the nerd news. However, till next time, all things are possible.